Oh,
Right.
What
Okay.
does this mean? This meeting is being recorded.
Well, it is.
Continue, yeah?
Yeah, they've never put that up before.
That's
I think
right.
they've done an update.
I
Maybe
think
people
they're
have-
telling everybody that that's what's happening. So,
Yeah.
Is that your ship on the wall, Colin?
sorry.
Is that your ship on the wall?
Which Colin you talking to?
You.
the one
You.
with a ship on the wall.
Up above your calendar, is that your ship that you're building?
My ship is HMS Victory.
How far,
Yeah.
how far of that have you built then?
And that's it up on the wall, is it?
That's the original drawings. Or the only drawings they can find, which are of the originals. That's
Oh, they built it to an awfully small scale, didn't they?
yeah, didn't they just? The bottom one is in 1795 and the one above it is 1765.
And what's that up there for? To give you ideas?
Well, I put it up about 5 years ago and I haven't taken it down since.
Right, okay.
One of
Hang on.
those,
What's all this
one of
come
those
up on my-
temporary. Oh, sorry.
Right. Okay. I've got a couple of videos from the National Geographic to show again then. So you okay? You all ready? Hopefully you can hear it.
Yep.
Yeah.
In this lesson, I want to go back. I want to go back to some of the pictures that you saw in the first lesson and look at how they were made. I want to show you how messy the whole process was, because you know, a lot of times pictures look simple once they're already done, but the actual process of doing them is always complicated, it's always messy, and it's just part of the way it happens. So let's go back to the Columbia Gorge. Let's go back to that glorious morning when the light was streaming through there. Well, what I can tell you was, it wasn't always that way. This was the 11th morning that I went back there. You know, every time you go to the Columbia Gorge and you look down over the river coming through the canyon, yes, it's always gorgeous. You can always make a pretty good picture. But I knew for this story, I needed to do something over the top. And so I couldn't just go with my first instinct. This was the first morning I was out there, and it looked fine. It was a nice enough picture. I went back again, and I did this, looking down the gorge in the evening. Another morning, I got a pretty good sunrise. Yeah, you know, light streaming through, but you know what it really told me was? There was something more to be had. There was something really good if I kept going back. I finally got back there on one morning. It was dull, it was gray, I wish I was in bed, and all of a sudden, red light started streaming through a break in the clouds, and then this happened. And as I said, I was hooping, I was hollering, I was screaming, looking through the viewfinder. It was just gorgeous. And the lesson was, keep going back, keep expecting more, and set higher goals. Don't expect to like perfectly the first picture that you take. Always expect that you can do something more. You know, landscape pictures very often become rather sedentary. Nothing's going on, and I want to suggest something to you. Think about your landscape pictures as if you were putting on a play, a theatrical model. What would you need? You'd need scenery for sure, and lighting for the mood and emphasis, but you'd also need actors, and you'd need a script. You need dialogue, you need narrative going on. If you can get all of those things into a landscape picture, you're pretty assured of having something that really tells a story. So let's go back. Let's go back and see Borere with all those thousands of gannets flying out at me at that evening and figure out how I got there. How did I end up in that place to get that picture? Well, I had seen Borere from afar. I'd seen it from over in St. Kilda. I knew there were thousands of birds around when you get up on the cliffs over there at St. Kilda. You can see it. You can see Borray off a couple of miles away from the coast of the island. It's always beguiling. It's always wonderful to think about getting over there. It makes its own weather. You know, the clouds stream off the top of it. I just knew that if you could get up close to it, there would be something going on. But you know, I'd seen it over and over again, and I'd never seen any pictures of Borray at sunrise or sunset. Never seen it with great light. And I finally figured out, you know why? It's because everybody goes there to see the birds. They go on a day trip, and by evening, they're back home over on the Isle of Harris. So I hired a boat. I got Seamus Morrison to take me over there in the evening, paid him a lot of money, and hoped for the best. We got there, it was terrible. It was socked in, it was awful. And I thought, oh, this is not going to be good. We came around, we could see the clouds shrouding the top of the island. I had a little bit of hope. We came around the other side, got a little bit of pinkish, reddish light coming in on the clouds that were down around. Made a nice picture, not what I was looking for. We came past one of the stacks and you can see all of the gannets nesting up on top of the stacks. I just hoped and prayed that there would be something come out of this because I just knew that there was something special to be gotten here. We came around the northeast side. The clouds were breaking a little bit. The light was coming off a little bit, not too much. But then, oh my gosh, the birds started flying out towards us. The boat is tipping and rocking, and one of the crewmen is holding on to me by my belt so I won't go over the back end. And the birds are streaming out in thousands and thousands. I thought this was the picture. As I was looking through the viewfinder, I thought this was the picture, but I didn't stop. I don't ever stop. I work it hard as long as I'm there and for as long as I possibly can. And when I zoomed in a little bit and I left out a lot of that other stuff, this is the moment that really, really worked. But I didn't know it at the time. I had no idea that that was the final image. So I kept shooting. Long after the light was totally gone, I kept trying every other sort of thing that I could try, but the light was gone, the birds were gone, the moment was gone. It still made nice pictures, but the picture was back there. That was the image. And I only discovered that was the image after I got back and was editing my pictures. The primary thing was I worked it as hard as I could for as long as I could when I had the great light. Something I'd like to share with you. Nobody is a born photographer. Nobody is born with talent. We all learn our skills one at a time, just like everybody else. So start in on a skill, figure it out, add it to your repertory, figure out something to do with it, internalize it, make it your own, and then start on another one. We all do it one at a time, and it all adds up, and it's all part of the process of learning, and it's a great deal of fun. I want to show you something related to that. Let's go back to the Callanish stones, and I want to share something with you that you can't see necessarily. I lit the stones at Callanish with a little flashlight that I carry in my bag. It's no bigger than that, you know, a tiny thing really. All of that lighting when there was done that. Let me take you through this and show you how this ended up happening. So yeah, I've been back to Callanish a lot. It's always impressive, but some days are better than others. I've been there at great sunsets. I've been there trying to make the clouds slide through by doing a long time exposure, working it every which way that I could. On that evening, I decided I'll wait till way after sundown. Maybe I can figure out something to do, but it was still pretty dull and gray. This was by 11:30 at night, and it's still that much light in the sky up there in northern Scotland, but it still wasn't terribly interesting. So I went and I got out my flash gun from my camera and I set it down on the ground so that I could fire it remotely and I could light up just one of the stones. And I thought, oh, that made something kind of interesting. And I kept experimenting with ways of doing that and changing the exposure. It's about 12:30 at night now. And I kept moving it around to another side, trying different angles, all those kind of things. And then you know what I did? I kicked the tripod leg during one of those exposures. See, the flash is going off at 1,000th of a second, but the exposure is 30 seconds. And when I kicked the tripod leg, it blurred the rest of the picture after the flash had already gone off. And I looked at this picture on the back of my camera and I said, oh, that's kind of interesting. Let's do that some more. So then I started experimenting with that. And what I did was I would have the flash go off and I would pick up the camera and I would shake the camera on the tripod. I didn't need the tripod on it, but I kept it there. I shake it, you know, and during that exposure, I'd fire the flash and then I would shake the camera like this, shake it in all kinds of directions. Anybody who saw me would have thought I was crazy. But it made this nice blurred background with one dramatic lit stone. Oh, I did that for about a half an hour, 45 minutes. Then I got out my little flashlight and I thought, oh, okay, it's getting dark enough. I could use my flashlight to light up a stone during a 30-second exposure. So I started experimenting with that. That's about my first one, a little harsh, you know. Then a guy came down at about 1:30 in the morning trying to figure out what the heck was going on here. So I used him for some of my experiments. I used him to stand there and while I lit him with a flashlight during a 30-second exposure. And then I started figuring, okay, I can light up the center stone and I can light up these stones over here on the side. I just kind of have the flashlight, I kind of graze along the surface of the stones as I'm running around in there. And then I'm trying to do more. I make the background darker and I light up the stones some more. And by this time, I'm running through the picture. I start out lighting these stones on the side with my little flashlight, and then I run into the picture and I light up the center stone. Now you can see my flashlight going right through there while I did it, so I didn't do that one very well. But as time goes on, I'm getting better. This is kind of fun. This is kind of fun to experiment with. And now you see I'm lighting up these stones here in the background. Those are getting all lit up, you know. Oh, there's a mistake, flashlight in there. Got to try another one. But now I'm also figuring out I can light up the grass as well. Now this is all during one 30-second exposure. I start out, I light up these stones, I run in there, I light up that stone, I run over and hide behind that stone, I light up the stones back behind it, I turn around and I light up the grass. All in 30 seconds. So I keep doing that, I keep getting better at this, I keep experimenting more, and by the time it's getting to be about 3:30 in the morning, I'm getting pretty good at this, you know. And it's really, the light is coming on, it's getting really beautiful. I got that picture and I thought it was pretty good. So then I stepped back and I said, okay, I can do something else. So I got outside the ring of the stones and I did the same kind of lighting with it a little bit further back, you know. And then I did something like this. I got a little lower. And when I got a little lower, it made the stones seem a little more monumental, you know. But the lighting still worked pretty good. And finally, I did that. And the light on the center stone, a little bit of light around on these other places, you know, the morning light is coming on. Looks pretty good. I keep at it, a couple of different kind of framings. It's looking pretty good, but you know what? Show's about over because my flashlight is being overpowered by the daylight. That ends up being the picture out of the whole thing. Started out the evening, had no idea I could do something like this. Ended up with a picture like this, which really made me happy. Once you have one of those skills, that little flashlight trick like I was just using, do it again. Figure out more things you can do with it. When I got to Fingal's Cave, I thought, you know, this might work again. I might be able to make this work. And now with you looking at that picture, after what I've just told you, you can start to figure out what I did. Now, Fingal's Cave out there in Staffa is made out of black basalt, which is, well, like dark. And it is a terrible place to photograph for that very reason. When you get inside, it gets blacker and blacker and blacker. And when you try to take pictures of it, you can do wonderful patterns in there, but you can't get a lot of sense of the cave because it gets blacker and blacker the farther back you go. But you know what I saw one time? I saw a picture of some Victorian boating party in an engraving going into Fingal's Cave, and a man was holding a lantern up at the front of it. And I thought, ha-ha, I can light the inside of Fingal's Cave. I've never seen anybody light the inside of Fingal's Cave. So I went out there, I got a couple of guys from the little hotel over in Iona. One of them was a pastry chef. They went over there, they camped with me overnight. In the evening, we went in with my strobes and we tried to light the inside of Fingal's Cave, and it wasn't working very well. So we got up the next morning and I had two 1 million power candle power flashlights, and they went back in the cave to light up the cave for me. Now this is about 4 o'clock in the morning and it's really dark out, and so all of the light is coming from the flashlight during a 3-minute exposure. All right? Now, 15 minutes later, the blue light from outside is starting to match some of the bright light from the flashlights inside. And at 15 minutes after that, it's starting to balance out very well. And then you start getting that kind of look. Blue coming from outside, the warm flashlight coming from inside. And then as time goes by, the outside light starts to dominate too much, and the flashlights can't keep up with it. The flashlights start fading. The flashlights get dimmer and dimmer. It's still a nice picture, but it's not what it was at about 4 o'clock in the morning when we were able to do that with a 3-minute exposure and 2 guys with flashlights back there in the background. I carry the flashlights with me all the time now because I never know when I'm going to find some place where I can really transform a picture with that one little skill. Now, you've seen some of my tricks. I'm going to tell you one really fundamental thing. If I had to choose between being dogged and being talented, I would take being dogged. And I want to show you why now. So, back up there, the Old Manor Store on the Isle of Skye. If you can get up on that hill, you can do a pretty good picture. But getting it all together, getting all those story elements, the lighting, the characters, all those things together is what really makes a difference. And so for this picture, I basically went up there. I've been there when it's looked like this, pretty darn gray, pretty bad, waiting, sitting there at that one place. And I just sit there for hours at a time sometimes. This one, I stayed there for 3 hours. And I want to show you something that happened because I was sitting there and I was waiting. So here I was, those volcanic spires are coming out of there. Finally, after 2 hours of waiting, light starts to come by, and then it does that. It's the last little rays that finally hit the top of that one little peak right there as it comes across that line of the landslip in the background. All of it come together, and then I want you to watch in the next picture when that little tip of light goes away. And it makes a huge difference in how the picture ends up working. Now, I'm sitting there, I stay until every last bit of light is gone. There are great clouds that come by. It's always a great scene. As the sun sets in the evening back behind it, it's always looking good. There's always something wonderful happening up there at the Old Manor Store. And I'm always glad for those moments when I can just work every last bit of it, trying to find one more thing to get out of it. Even then, I wasn't sure I had the picture. So you know what I did? I went back the next morning. Back the next morning because I'm always sure that the world has something more to offer me, something special. But as it turned out, that ended up being the image, and it was just that momentary bit of light that was gone in 10 seconds after I got that made it worthwhile of sitting up there for hours at an end. One of the reasons to practice your skills is because you're not always going to have a lot of time like I did on that last picture where I could stay all afternoon and go back the next morning. Sometimes it happens a lot faster and you want to be ready. That's what happened to me this morning when I was going to Glasgow Airport from the Isle of Skye, and I had to be there on time. But I went by Loch Kilcroist, the Harry Loch, and oh my gosh, the light was wonderful. And so I just knew I had to stop, even if I only had 15 minutes that I could squeeze in to try and get a picture out of this. So I fell back on my old skills of framing, of finding multiple ways of framing something, to use the geometry of the scene to try and make a variety of different kinds of pictures, even if I have to just shoot them really, really fast. Now, I got some light coming through. I got lucky a few times. Some light really shone through on the grass and didn't shine on the hill in the background. That made some drama for me. But even when I was doing that, I'm trying to find ways of including some of the scene, but not all of it, finding different geometries within the picture. Glad when some little clouds and light came through over the lock. Better when more clouds came through, trying to see how, if I want it perfectly symmetrical, or if I want to move things up and down a little bit, how much of the hill in the background to include, how much to come in tighter, whether or not to come in really tight on that one tree across there with just the reflections there in the foreground. That worked pretty good. I was kind of happy with that one. But also trying some really asymmetrical sort of arrangements, going off to one side, leaving out a whole lot of it. And then as the light hit the hill up there, coming back and thinking I'd better pull back a little further, finally figuring out that I had time to do several pictures and maybe put together a panorama out of it. And that is probably what ended up working the best, because I was able to get all of that in and then stitch it together later into this one big grand panorama that had all of those elements and be out of there in 15 minutes. If I'm known for saying anything about photography, it is probably this. If you want to be a better photographer, stand in front of more interesting stuff. Now, that's my way of saying you can be a better photographer if you have interesting subjects in front of you than if you have boring subjects in front of you. I am a much better photographer when I'm standing in front of the Grand Canyon than when I'm standing in front of a car wash, frankly. And so I spent a lot of time on research. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out where to go, where the great pictures are going to be. I tried to load the deck in my favor when I head out the door with my cameras. One of those places I found doing a lot of research was the Isle of Muck. I love that name. It's a little island out there in the small isles off the west coast of Scotland in the Inner Hebrides. It only got 39 people, but I just fell in love with the name. I fell in love with the place, the idea of going out there, and so I went. And I knew that it was owned by the McEwen family and that it might make some good pictures. Sure enough, when we got there, out across the one road that goes a mile across the island, we found Lawrence McEwen's farm, found the horses out there wandering down the road. You think, boy, you know, if you can't make a picture with horses on an island and another island shrouded in clouds in the background, you're a pretty poor photographer. So we stayed out there on the beach with the horses, got to be real good friends with them. They got to be a little obnoxious. They keep nudging around, but all of it was wonderful, wonderful pictures. The easy thing, having found it, would have been just take the first picture. Take the first picture. All of the pictures were good. All of the pictures were enough. And yet, somehow, I just have this dogged sense that if I keep looking, I can probably do something that even I didn't think I could do, something I didn't expect I could do. So we followed the horses around out on the beach. They went wandering out there towards the shore. The clouds in the background were great. All of this is wonderful. And then somehow or another, I got this idea of getting down low, just getting a piece of the horse as it came by. So I'm crawling around there, I'm sticking the camera down on the ground, I'm shooting every which kind of angle I can. And finally I do something that kind of surprised me. Just the horse. I always noticed this horse had a beautiful gray coat. It had this mane coming down there. The island was in the background. The colors all came together. All of it came together. And instead of a literal picture, it became a symbolic island picture. Now I'm glad I've got both of those pictures, but this is the one that always makes my heart sing when I look at it, and it's one of the special pictures that I feel I got out of the Inner Hebrides. Wherever I've gone, I've enjoyed the photography, the exploration, the research, the sharing, the whole process. And so I'm glad I've been able to share some of this with you. You know how long I've been going back to Scotland? 20 years. 20 years to finding little places like Pennon. Pennon, that little town on the northeast coast of Scotland that was the setting for that wonderful cult movie, Local Hero, There's a lovely little one-road town right down on the beach. There's a phone booth there that people around the world love to call. I've got that phone number in my phone. And every once in a while I dial it up. I'm just hoping somebody will be walking by who I can say hello to and take me back to a place that's special to me. So I go back a lot. I go back because I'm convinced that the world has more to share with me, that I have more to learn, that I have some way of making images that will be special, that I'll love to share with people, and that will say something that I haven't said before. This is Kaulila. It's over on the Isle of Isla. It's an old whiskey distillery town. I shot it from out on the water looking back, and you get this great sense of what the whiskey industry was like in Scotland. This is Jura, just over the way from Isla. Jura has 6,000 deer, 200 people, and 1 distillery. That's about the right ratio in life, isn't it? It's a lovely little tiny little town, a lovely island, wild, scenic. All these places have somehow made me glad that I found them, made me glad that I was there at that moment, that I pressed the button on my camera, that I captured this thing. So I want to take you to one last place. Back to the Isle of Muck one more time, across that road I told you about, 1 mile across the island, over to find Lawrence McEwen, the Laird of Muck. This old medieval laird, a guy who probably could ask his tenants to pick up their pitchforks and battle the invading Vikings if he wanted to. It still exists. I went out there because I wanted to find this islander in his element, with his sheep, with his island, in his world. And I wanted to see his island. I wanted to see the world that he lives in. And here's a real simple tip. When you want to do something like this, you go find a hill to climb. You go find the highest spot you can get on and find a way that you can get in the foreground, some sense of where you're standing, and this wonderful expanse off in the background. You have to have both elements one way or another. So I climbed up on the hill on this little island. The island is only 2.5 miles long and 1 mile wide. It's really not a very big place at all. And the scene up there is really quite nice. A great bay over here on the right side, the Isle of Egg off there in the distance, the farmland of Lawrence's farm rolling out down below. It's really a very pretty place. But you know what? Those pictures of just the islands didn't do it. And I finally realized after 2 days of being there that I had to have Lawrence and his islands. So I went to Lawrence and asked him if he would consent to climb the hill with me up there to the top of it so I could get a picture of him and his islands. And that was the real key, because Lawrence has got a great face. One of the reasons I came to the Isle of Muck is I'd seen pictures of Lawrence. Oh, look at that beard, those eyes, that hair. He's a wild-looking guy, extraordinarily kind, but I just knew that he would make pictures. So we got him up there. The wind is howling. It is just about to blow us away. The reason we're over on this side of the hill is because if we're standing on top, we're going to get blown away. And with that wind, I knew that we could make pictures out of it, of course. That was actually a kind of a blessing. The dark skies up above, all of it was something that was part of his element and really made the wildness come out. I kept looking around for ways of shooting it. I kept looking for angles, how wide it should be, how close Lawrence should be to me, where all these other things should come into the frame. I'm shooting a lot of frames as I'm going about this. And then there's his lovely dog. The dog comes over, Lawrence scratches it, so you know that's going to make pictures. Any of these pictures would have been good enough, but I thought there was probably something more. Lawrence has the great look. He has the piercing face, a piercing gaze as he looks out over these islands like his ancestors have done for generations, I'm sure. And then he's leaning in there against the rock with his crook in one hand, and the dog comes over. The dog comes over and Lawrence reaches up to pet him. And he looks at me, and the dog looks at me, and with his eyes, and then he does that. Just a bit of a smile. The dog looks away. The clouds are in the background. The island is down below. And even with that, I want you to watch one more thing. Watch the next frame. Watch Lawrence's eye. See that? See his eye come alive like this? All of a sudden, we've gone from this, a gentleman, to this, a gentle guy with a piercing gaze, alive in his element, part of a wild world, also a very civilized world. And that ended up being the picture of Lawrence that I came to get 20 years after I started photographing in Scotland. I had found one of those pictures that I'd always been looking for. Great fun, great adventure. Glad I did it. Okay, you've seen my tricks. You know what I do to make pictures now. You've seen me go back to the Callanish Stones with my little flashlight, hang out all night doing some lighting like I'd never done before so I could come back with a picture like I'd never done before. You saw me go back to the Flint Hills, get down with the wildflowers down to their level, try and get into their world. You see me hang around at the Old Manor store up on the Isle of Skye, waiting hours for one little bit of light to get to just the right place, someplace I'd been before. So my assignment to you is go back. Go back to someplace you know. Go back to someplace close to home that you photographed before, some bit of nature that you love, some landscape that you're familiar with, some landscape that you've done in a number of ways before, but you need to explore again. Go back with better expectations. Go back with a new bit of gear. Go back with a new technique. Go back and work at 360, both metaphorically, physically. Get around that thing and try and come back with some picture that you never expected that you could do before. Go back and come back with something new.
You're still awake?
Yeah,
Well,
just
quite-
got back.
Being late, Pete.
Sorry?
Apologies for being late.
That's okay. That's okay, Trudy. Ray's here as well. You all
Hi,
right, Ray?
guys, all right. All right.
I think that was quite interesting, wasn't it?
Really good. Really
Gives you
enjoyed that.
Gives you some thoughts.
So you and Gary inspired for your trip now then?
Yeah, yeah. They're ready for some late nights and early mornings. Not necessarily in that order. But
It's an
yeah,
amazing place, isn't it? I love the horse one he did in the end, you know, with the back
Yeah.
of the horse and the mane.
yeah.
Clever.
Interesting, wasn't it?
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about his 15 minutes.
What?
It's
Oh, what, to get there?
He was
the,
there for 15
Panoramic. Yeah. 15-minute panorama. He did good.
Yeah.
No.
He said that there aren't any born photographers, but I don't know, Gary. Maybe you're one.
A bit like,
Mary would have probably cropped that horse one.
Yeah, they cropped the horse out.
I thought perhaps Gary had already been there and cropped the horse out.
I've been most of those places, yeah.
Well, we haven't seen the photos.
Well,
Where's your photo with the lovely horse?
uh,
I like
Right.
what he did with the stones as well, with the flash. That was really clever.
I got another one to show as well, bit on landscapes.
Painting with the light, that's called.
Say that again, Bob.
That's called painting with light.
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, we've had a go at that, haven't we?
Didn't we?
He said that, so it was at the ratio of distilleries to people. He said, was it 200 to 1 distillery was quite
Yeah.
a good ratio.
That's Jura. And there's
That's whiskey, isn't it? Jura whiskey.
Mm.
about 100 yards of road which cars could pass. The rest of the roads on the island are single carriageway.
Wow. I'd love to get out there. That's on my list for sure.
Yeah,
Eagles,
there's
okay.
some nice places up there.
Good for eagles as well.
I was at Avebury the other day though, and they've got brilliant stones there, haven't they, for that sort of
They
Yes.
photo? I don't
Yeah,
know if
very,
anyone's been up there.
very similar to what he took there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have a day out up there.
Yeah, it's only an hour, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not far.
I was going to say, Peter, I did suggest that we go up and do late evening one day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That'd be-
good shout.
that'd
Yeah.
be good, I think.
Silbury Hill up there, all sorts.
When the nights get a bit
Yeah.
earlier. Yeah. Okay, I got another one here, another video on landscaping and whatever. Right, here we go.
What was the name of that last one, Pete?
I'll
Sort it later.
I'll give it to you at the end, Ray.
No worries.
My name is Mike Yamashita. I've been a photographer for National Geographic for over 30 years. And during that time, I've shot a lot of landscapes. I believe that my photographs are the best teachers. So let's take a look at some of those pictures I've shot over the years. One of my first big landscape story assignments was about Japanese gardens, and I learned a lot of lessons from this 1,000-year-old tradition. Those garden designers work from the same design elements that a photographer works with. So this is Saihoji, a Zen garden, and Zen is about simplicity, as should be your landscape photographs. It's almost like they're screaming for you to take a picture from this viewpoint. As I was walking along this path you see here, I came to this point, and it's a perfect composition. And this is what the designer did for me. He put that little bridge there, cut down a third of the way, gives you a focal point. You see the reflection off the pathway in the background, and then you focus on that little tea garden house in the background. Here the designer has prescribed the frame. He's framed it, in this case with a platform and shoji, because the viewer, unlike an American or Western garden, the viewer is going to come here and sit and contemplate and look at that hedge there, which is the garden itself. And he's going to let his imagination kind of run wild. And isn't that what we as photographers hope with our photographs, that the viewer will spend time with it and stare at it and find things through his imagination, through his mind's eye, and find meaning with that photograph. Here is another way of prescribing the view. He's got what they call a moon viewing window here round. And so the viewer who's standing here looks out and sees through the window and sees a particular piece of the garden. And then he provides another window here to give us another view, prescribed view, pointing us to various elements in the garden that he wants us to see. And perhaps for the ultimate living art, this is a garden outside the Adachi Museum. And this museum has cut windows and various viewpoints of the garden, so you're looking at living art. They've even put a frame around it. So again, this picture is screaming to be, by the designer, screaming to the photographer, take my picture from here. The elements of photography are the elements of the design. So you have some foreground interest, layering, a middle ground, and a background. In this case, the mountain in the background is beyond a highway, which this mound of garden is hiding. Prescribed view is what they call that, and borrowed scenery. Just other words that in photography terms would be called framing the picture and layering the photographs. Here we have a 7-fold bridge. So just as a photographer likes to lead the viewer into the photograph, maybe using leading lines or S-curves, the garden designers thought the same thing. The pedestrian, the viewer of the garden, comes across, he's forced to go this way, he has to keep looking down, otherwise he'll fall into the water, and while he's doing that, he's focusing on what the designer wants him to see, which in this case are these beautiful irises off to the left and right. Here we have points of color. The designers thought of everything. Red maple leaves to contrast against the green moss in the fall. Gardens are seasonless, so he gives you things to look at in every different season. The lord or the daimyo who asked for this garden to be built in his backyard loved Fuji. So the gardener has decided to make a miniature Fuji in his backyard. I merely photographed it with these gardeners who are cutting the grass in order to give it some scale so you can have a sense of how large it is. And of course, it's nice that they happen to be wearing these nice blue rain slickers to contrast against the green. Living color. So the designer decides that, again, giving a focal point of color, he puts in the color for koi or carp, in this case, to focus the viewer much as we would in a photograph, and as I have done here, focusing on that color in order to give a viewpoint and a place, and of course it becomes the main subject. Detail of that. Notice organized on a diagonal, sharp points and soft points and beautiful light, color in the landscape, color in the garden. And here we have actually a Japanese bath in a famous spa. I'm using this log, which is a pipe actually bringing hot water into the pool, as my leading line, much as probably the designer, whoever made this, designed this onsen, this rock bath, in the same way, put that there, yes, so that your eye follows it in to the water. And of course, we got this beautiful light, early morning light, and reflection and design. So let me show you a few pictures from some of my 30 National Geographic stories, starting with the first on Hokkaido, Japan. This is Daisetsuzan, the national park that's located right in the center of the island. And this place is famous for volcanoes. So we start out with this very dramatic subject of volcanoes. I shot it with full smoke coming out of the fumaroles. Beautiful weather, blue sky, great light, and the addition of those two little guys there that give you a sense of scale. Obviously, also, it's the shape of the mountain looking like a Mount Fuji that puts you right into Japan. Here we are putting people in the landscape. I've taken a very low angle here. In fact, I have my camera almost right in the mud. And I'm looking up at these planters, or the women who are transplanting the rice here. Got great light, good texture, side light. I've created this triangular composition here, and right up close you can see the action of the hand and this wonderful mud as she's placing the rice shoot into the mud. Here we have a long lens. I'm using a zoom lens to frame these horses in silhouette against a beautiful geometric pattern of a barn, wonderful color. The snow adds to the pattern. I've caught these horses just at the right moment. You can see each of the legs are separated and the head and the ears are up. I like this picture. One of my second story was on New Jersey, which is where I still live today. And you've heard that cliche, making the ordinary extraordinary. Well, that's our everyday job. So here I am in the state that I live in, on a road that I take often into New York City. And this was our lead spread, because it's about New Jerseyans, in this case, streaming into the city. I shot it at sunrise. I chose this angle looking down the hill and putting the city up on a rise there, so it sort of looks like Oz. And I have this nice leading line of the road bringing you into that, into New York, and these wonderful brake lights waiting for the moment when they're coming down the hill. The brake lights are on, and giving you a focal point to get you right into that frame. Not only is New Jersey the most populous state, but it's also the Garden State. So I did an aerial in this very flat part of southern Jersey in order to turn this field into a graphic pattern of ribbons. Notice how it's cut in thirds. I have off center, nothing cut, nothing in the middle, and then this little tractor here that provides the focal point for which you can rest your eye as you're moving around the frame. So this is a story about the four seasons of Vermont, and my first coverage was there in the winter. I came and shot this particular street with maple trees because I had a picture in mind shooting also in the spring. And here I am in springtime. I remembered that position. I thought this would be great if I can shoot a series of photographs that would be indicative of each season, and in the end we ran all four of them as part of our story. So here's the second. Shot it in the same, in subdued light again. The easiest light to work with is the soft light. Saturated, very saturated greens early morning. Don't have to worry about shadows if the sun was out. Summertime. I waited till it rained to have that same quality of light. Now you can see the leaves and full-sized leaves, lots of variation of green, nice soft light and shine on the road thanks to the rain, the water on the top of the roadside. And fall. Again, subdued light, beautiful color, and that's the way we ran the pictures in the story. Kyushu, southern Japan, famous for its hot springs. So I've shot this cityscape using a tripod, slow shutter, and I blurred the smoke, the steam coming out of these onsen, these spas, in order to give this some mystery and atmosphere in this landscape. The Taklamakan Desert. This is a series from Marco Polo. And Marco, 700 years ago, came and saw this mountain, and he called it the Singing Sand Dunes for the sound that the wind created as it came over the top. Well, anyway, 700 years later, I'm here, and it's a huge tourist attraction. So I was actually very disappointed. I got here, and off to the right there's hundreds of camels and thousands of people waiting to take their camel rides. And I thought, my God, how am I going to take this picture, which is very important for the story? So I got in the car and I drove around the mountain and I saw the frame, backlit, so that the camels are in shadow, slightly underexposed. You think that's Marco Polo crossing the Taklamakan, where it really is camel 31, 65, 22, 87, and 91 with 6 tourists on top going around the mountain. I gave the illusion of Marco Polo crossing the Taklamakan Desert. Unusual lighting conditions. Now, you're not used to seeing snow in end of April in this high desert near the Afghan-China border. So it started snowing heavily, and all these guys came. I'm desperately looking for a subject because the light and the circumstances, this unusual weather condition, are such that I knew it was going to make a great picture. But I needed a subject, and all these guys came out on the street because they were from inside a factory, and they also were surprised by the snow. And thank God for that guy with a red umbrella who walks right into my frame, click, and I have my focal point. Just put your hand over the top of that umbrella and see how different a photograph it is without that little bit of red. Here's another one of those, I must take this picture, I must have this picture, or a great picture, because it's important for our story on Marco Polo. This is Adam's Peak in Sri Lanka, and 4 different religions work or worship up here at the top. So I needed a picture that said something dramatic about this place because we knew we were going to publish this picture. I climbed it the day before, and it was arduous. You climb at nighttime. I forgot 6 hours. I got there for the dawn. The sun never popped on it. Sun even didn't come out till maybe 10 o'clock, and I was thinking, whoa, this is difficult because obviously I need a picture clear of the clouds in order to show this in its best light. So I noticed also that they had good cell service up there. So I left my cell phone with the priest in the temple at the top of the mountain, and came down, went back to Colombo. I had a helicopter waiting for me the next morning at 6:30. I called my cell phone, called the guy at the top and said, "What's the weather like?" And he said, "Better than yesterday." So on that information, we hopped into the helicopter, and by helicopter it's only 30 minutes. By car, maybe it took 2 or 3 hours. And as we came closer to the mountain, I could see these clouds forming, and I got really excited. I emptied 3 or 4 cameras on 3 or 4 trips around the mountain. I got this frame. Photographers are paid to be lucky. And here is a picture from my last story, which you might have seen in the magazine. It was on Chama Gudao, the Tea-Horse Road that goes to Tibet. And here we are in Lhasa, and I definitely need a picture of Potala Palace. Only I need a picture that says 10th century. I need a picture as a traveler would have seen it approaching Lhasa years ago, as if like on the Chama Gudao, the Tea-Horse Road. So if you shoot from the front, there's nothing but traffic and tourists and cars. Obviously not the frame I was looking for. So counterintuitively, I started driving around the back, looking for something else. And I had something in mind. One of my colleagues, and perhaps the most famous mountain photographer to ever live, Galen Roll, who was a good friend of mine, had taken a picture with a rainbow coming down on the Potala Palace, perhaps the most famous photograph of this place that's ever been taken. Well, here's my attempt. Thank you, Galen, for giving me this angle, and I found an area similar to where he must have shot, and thanks to this reservoir, or I don't even know if it's filled half the whole year, but I got this wonderful reflection, beautiful light, nice layering. Works. So let me take you now inside a National Geographic landscape story and show you how I did it. The story is about Jiuzhaigou. Now, Jiuzhaigou, which means 9 Tibetan villages, is China's most popular and probably most photogenic, as far as I could see, national park. It's on the edge of the Tibetan Plateau. This is the lead picture and has all the elements of the park. Wonderful, clear, crystal clear, aqua-colored water and vibrant color from the vegetation. Shot in an abstract way, which kind of adds a little mystery to the photograph and gets the reader interested right from the beginning. The source of the water is up in the mountains. I got lucky with this wonderful cloud cover and got this frame of kind of hide and seek. The mountain, my favorite kind of light actually, is this in and out sunshine. I get a big burst of sun and then none at all. And these lights keeps coming and going as the fog does, and it makes for a nice mysterious effect. This is an overall shot from the top of a mountain. Obviously, I had to climb there. Kind of gives you a sense of the geography of this park, as it's a series of waterfalls and lakes and streams and rivulets as the water flows down into the valley. Here we are at one of the most colorful lakes. It's called Five Color Pond. And you can see this incredible color at the bottom of the lake. Well, what is that? That is actually the vegetation and sand that's actually at the bottom of the lake. So you get this mixture of the reality, the real, which is the trees, and reflections on a very colorful bottom. And because the water is so clear, you see all of that. This is it in the winter time. Notice there are rules that all composition rules, I believe, are meant to be broken. And the rule of thirds, where many landscapes, many pictures are divided into thirds, this one works as a half. So because you have this wonderful reflection here, and again, you've got this, the reality of snowy trees mixed in with the bottom of the lake. I used a polarizer filter in order to cut the reflection to see down here. Here we are. You can see this now a little bit more clearly, what I was talking about. Trees, sand bottom, so it comes out blue, and then down here you've got green pond muck, so the reflection turns green. Here we go again, this compositional device. In this case, this is thirds. And now you can see even more clearly as I'm focused just on the bottom, composing in a diagonal. And again, the mystery, the pattern here, beautiful color, incredibly clear water. We like to have a little bit of mystery about your photograph so that people will spend time with it. I want the viewer to look at that and go say, what is that? And by giving this sense of mystery, don't give it away right away, that the person has to spend time and study the picture in order to figure it out, what it's all about. Here's another pattern, again, clear bottom, beautifully clear water, looking down into a pond, in this case with a rock bottom. So I shot this picture, but then A second later, the wind blows over the top and creates this little bit of blur and this little bit of highlight over there. And suddenly I have a picture elevated over the last one. This is one of a kind. This is what we call the moment. The most popular and kind of the money photo for this park is this particular waterfall. It's huge. It's called Shoal Falls. Billions of tourists there. You got to get up early. You got to get there before they do. I'm down low. I'm using a low angle. I'm shooting into this beautiful water. I've got it on a tripod, and that allows me to use a slow shutter and blur this water into this wonderful soft sense of water and movement and beautiful light, backlight reflecting off of the water completes the photograph. Here we have a smaller waterfall. I framed it in green. Got this wonderful tree here giving foreground interest, these leading lines pushing your eye back into the right side of the photograph. And again, using a tripod and blurring the water to give this soft movement effect. And in any national park, of course, you're going to be running into a lot of tourists as well as a lot of photographers. So why not include them in your landscape as I've done here? I'm shooting against the backdrop of that waterfall that I showed you a little while ago. And I'm using the photographer's light as he's reflecting light on the beautiful bride. Got this wonderful side light coming in, and it makes an interesting composition and an interesting landscape and tells something about a little storytelling about Jiuzhaigou. Here, I'm trying to show that jewel-like quality of the water. I've taken a low angle. I'm actually right down on my stomach. I'm looking at a rivulet of water as it comes over the edge of the lake. And I've focused in tight with a telephoto lens. I've created a composition out of the falling water with a little bit of movement. And mainly, I've captured this quality of this jewel-like blue-green, aqua-green water as it flows into the next stream. Finally, this is perhaps my favorite picture, and it's a very storytelling one in that 30 years ago when Jiuzhaigou was discovered, it was being logged by a number of lumberjacks, and part of the character of the park is you will see a lot of these fallen dead trees, snags in the water. This one in particular grabbed my attention as it was coming straight out of the water. And what you're seeing here is a reflection of sky in the water, a reflection of the mountains. So it has all the elements and this wonderful color green. And then you have the added interest of this moss that's growing on the top of the snag, and with this beautiful little flowers that is growing out of that. This for me was the ultimate frame. It told the most, has all the elements of the park and really tells the story. And the ender to this one is I went back several years later after they had an earthquake here, and it was no longer visible as it had sunk under the water with the earthquake, and no one can take this picture again.
Hello.
Somebody make a funny noise.
It's only on laughing gas.
Well, I think that there's some interesting points there.
Yeah.
One, get yourself a helicopter if you want some nice, some nice photos from the air.
Yeah, that's old school. You want a drone now?
Yeah, got a drone, haven't you? Don't have to endanger yourself then. Right. Okay. I don't know if anybody's got any other thoughts on that.
Well, the all of them were based on having all the time to be able to study a subject and
Oh,
to
sorry, I'll move the chair. Too low.
Sorry, Colin. Say again.
they were all based on having time to study a subject, the money to go to the place, to stay there and spend a lot of time just waiting for the right moment, which very few amateurs can do,
Yeah.
unless they're very specialised and live in a particular part of the country they can get to. So you shouldn't be too disappointed if your images don't match up to those.
No.
Take the opportunity when you see it and enter it in a competition.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Like we got the New Forest on our doorstep. Is what one, and I think the first video one is like you said. If you don't get the photo you wanted, sort of like try going back at different times.
Yeah, when I was at Bewley, we had a couple come along and gave us a talk, and they live near Calmore, near the Testwood Lakes.
Yeah.
All their pictures the whole night were about Testwood Lakes.
Oh right.
And they got some really, you wouldn't believe with Testwood Lakes, pastel shots and all the rest of it. So I think it does pay to keep going back. It's just that that's not my photography really.
No. No.
No, it's almost an obsession.
So what? It's almost what, an obsession.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think. Dave, do you know your voice is all funny?
Oh no.
He's on the nitrous side again.
He's been on the helium.
Yeah, he's been on the helium. He's been playing with the settings again. Right, okay. Anybody else got anything? A couple of things for Ray and Trudy. I put on the this week's email that the next week is the PDI.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
got it.
Yeah.
14th, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can get them to me by Monday at the latest, Monday morning at the latest, and then we'll get all that set up and we can go through those next Tuesday night. Make sure you crop them properly, won't you? That'll save Gary a job then. Right, okay. Anybody else got anything they want to mention?
Anybody see Photography Challenge last night?
No, I haven't seen this week's or last week's yet.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Good.
There's been quite a lot of programs on about photography lately, haven't there?
Yeah.
Because there was a repeat of Lee Miller last night as well.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
What
That
was
was
that
interesting.
on the same channel?
Yeah, BBC.
Oh, right. Oh, right. I didn't see that. I
No, I
didn't.
missed that. Okay.
Lee Miller, and there was another program last night as well that I saw.
Oh, right.
That's all beaten.
Yeah.
I think the ranking one is all about trying to get the people to become commercial photographers, because he sets assignments and this, that, and the other, and they're all about shooting models or this, that, and the other. And well, it's all right if you want to be a commercial photographer, I suppose, but otherwise, I'm not that interested.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's about get them to push their
Next week is a bit.
I missed that, Bob.
Next week's about landscapes.
Oh, is it?
I was
Yeah,
interested
one
in.
of the assignments.
Go on, Keith.
I was interested in how good the photographs were out of mobile phones.
Yeah.
So some of them were really quite creative. I was surprised.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other day, the fact that most phones these days seem to be sold on the ability of the camera more than the ability of it to be a phone. There's so much you can do with the latest models, I think.
But a phone is just a phone, isn't it? No matter what you do, you can just ring out or receive calls. But by adding a camera in there, you kind of like earn yourself a lot more money, and people will go for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, they're really developed into what the old PDAs were, what were they? Personal digital assistants.
Yeah.
And they tack the phone to that. It's like, oh, look, yeah, we've got a smartphone now.
Yeah. Maybe we ought to have a comp one month, as you know, as well as the normal PDI. Maybe do one that we take them on a phone.
That's a good idea.
You're joking. Yeah, well, I was just going to say, unfortunately, somebody like Colin might not be able to enter.
That's what it requires you to have a half decent phone, doesn't it?
We had that. I think he was a postman, and he used to get some cracking shots at sort of like 5 o'clock in the morning. Oh, and I remember talking to him one day, and he said, "Oh no," I said, "You carry all your gear with you?" He said, "No, it's my phone." I couldn't believe it, and he was getting first everybody.
Oh yeah, what in the club? Yeah, was it Simon? Was it Simon? I think.
Do you know, for the life of me, I can't remember his name.
I know he did. I know he did driving for
incredible photographs, and they were all taken on his blinking phone, wasn't it?
Yes, they were.
Oh, good.
What was it? Birds with no clothes on?
Oh no, none of those.
Oh,
That was
not that he's
window
judging.
paper.
It just shows it's the individual's ability to see an image.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's an important element of it, isn't it?
Sorry, Dave.
Sorry, Dave. Sorry.
Dave, if you talk really slow, it will come out normal.
He's gone.
Absolutely.
Oh, no.
Fair enough, no.
Upset him.
Right, okay. Well, if there's nothing else.
I had a go with my flying lady. Do you know I entered that one and I had the that flying across the field?
Oh yes, yeah.
So I listened to some of the feedback, had a play on that. I don't know if I can share it at the moment.
I
I've been
can.
disabled.
One minute, you can do if I let you.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, I'll try it now.
Let's have a look.
Get the phone.
Okay, remember that one?
Not there yet.
How's that?
No.
No, haven't got anything.
Black screen.
Oh dear.
Sharing, but we're not seeing anything. But it
Ah,
might
yeah,
just be
that's
slow.
it.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it.
Got it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just I had a quick play, just taking on board what you said, just for a bit of fun and learning.
Yes,
So I
yeah,
took
yeah.
out a couple of the strips, and Terry was quite right. It's yes, I think that lady's been used a few times from Wisley on the fountain. But I've added a shadow as well, so I sort of something new I learned to do.
Yeah.
So that's come out quite nice. Played about with it, but yeah, having fun doing a bit of compositing stuff. Got myself one of these as well, guys. Anyone had a go with a lens ball?
Yeah, Bob's got one.
Bob, you got one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got one.
Bring it out next time for a bit of fun. See what
Yeah.
we can get with that.
Yeah, Bob's got one. He's never really used it.
Yeah, he showed a few in the competitions.
He
Yeah,
put
yeah.
one in the competition.
Used it a few
Yeah.
times. I've never put nothing in competition.
Pete, did you mention about this franchises lodge?
No, I didn't.
chance.
I haven't actually looked at that text yet. So
Okay.
I'll do that and I'll let everybody we'll have a look at that because it might be worth a trip out there.
Yeah, it's a place. It's a place called Franchises Lodge out the New Forest, and I think I got chatting to someone who volunteers there through the RSPB, and I explained, about the camera cover. He said, "Yeah, you'd be welcome to come along sometime, but it's an invite only. It's like a secret part of the New Forest, so
Yeah.
it'd be pretty cool."
Yeah, so that'll be good. No, we'll have a
Put it
look
on
at
the
that.
list.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Somewhere different.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll dig out the link and get some more details on it, and I'll get that round to everybody.
Thanks, mate.
Right, okay,
Cool.
folks. We'll